Good afternoon, folks. As you can see, well, as I was talking about yesterday, what part did Canada play not only in the Revolutionary War, but in all the wars that were close to America? Well, since it was part of the British rule, since it was under British rule for so long, and French rule for a little bit of time, it had a lot to do with the wars. Well, first off, when it was after the French and Indian War, when the French were pretty much booted out of America and partially booted out of Canada, there was a lot that went on. The British pretty much ran all the way across Canada and pretty much owned Canada. It was pretty much a piece of land that was owned by Great Britain. Pretty much. Now, if you want to look at another perspective, Canada also was pretty much on the brink of other things. I mean, let's look at other things here. The French, pretty much, once the French were defeated, they pretty much went back home for the time being. Now, the War of 1812 broke out. So, what happens then? British are in Canada. They can easily drive down in the United States, which pretty much what they did. In American territory in Michigan, at Fort Detroit, they drove from Canada in there. In the other parts of the United States, they drove into in other battles, like New York and other states. They drove into and had battles in there. And there were some battles, and the United States even drove into Canada themselves and had some decent battles and key battles. And there were some key battles that the United States won in Canada. Like, we're going to talk about some of these people. Like Fort George, for instance. Canada. John Vincent was the British in charge. Pretty much, Canada was just like another British type of ion. 1,000 regulars, 300 militia, 15 natives. John Vincent in charge, 107 dead, 175 wounded, 280 captured, including the wounded. Okay, so let's go with the Americans. 4,000 regulars, 1 Corvette, 1 brig of war, and 12 guns. 41 dead, 115 wounded. Colonel Winfield Scott was in charge of that. He pretty much, prevailed as the person in charge. Then we look at other key battles, such as another battle that occurred up there was the first battle of Fort Erie, another place in Canada. 4,500 Americans charged with there with Jacob Brown and Winfield Scott again. Only 9 Americans were killed. Major Thomas Buck in charge with 137 British troops. All of them surrendered. The fort was handed right to the Americans. Pretty much it looked like Canada was going to go in their favor. And then we have Battle of Lake Erie. Actually, that's Ohio, but we'll get to that one here momentarily. Then we had the Siege of Fort Erie. Interesting, isn't it? Siege of Fort Erie. The Americans were outnumbered here. 2,800 to 4,800. Jacob Brown was with Edmund Gaines and Winfield Scott, all there. Then British General Gordon Drummond sent 4,800 troops, but pretty much, annihilated. 285 killed, 508 wounded, 748 captured, and 12 missing. While the Americans, 213 killed, 565 wounded, and 240 captured, 57 missing. I mean, the Americans pretty much, well, they still had a little bit of a loss to do, but they still pretty much will prevail there. So those were pretty much all Canadian battles that were handed to the Americans. Now we got a couple Ohio battles. And then we'll talk about one of the major battles that Andrew Jackson was well known for. Starting with the Battle of Lake Erie, Commodore Oliver Perry, 5 schooners, 3 brigs, 1 sloop, 540 men. Then you have Commander Robert Barclay of the British fleet, 2 ships, 1 brig, and two schooners and 1 sloop with 450 men. 41 dead, 93 wounded, and 316 captured. Pretty much the entire fleet was captured, pretty much. Then for the Americans, 27 dead, 96 wounded, and 1 brig severely damaged. Now we get to the major battle. The New Orleans with Andrew Jackson. You get, with 8,000 troops, this is down in New Orleans, right where the Louisiana Purchase was. You have Sir Edward Packham versus Andrew Jackson. 8,000 troops versus 500,700. Totally outnumbered. The Americans pretty much will diagram down and covered. But the Americans pretty much will dominated them. Covered was in their favor. 386 killed, 1,521 wounded, 552 captured, leaving the British with 2,459 casualties. The only thing that went the Americans' way was an open field. They had cover, the British were in the open field, which caused them, and Sir Edward Packenham was killed in action. While Andrew Jackson's troops, 13 killed, 30 wounded, 19 MIA. 62 troops left. The Siege of Fort Meigs. This is where William Henry Harrison, another future president, and British General Henry Proctor, 1,250 natives, 433 regulars, and 462 Canadian militia. 14 British killed, 47 wounded, 41 POWs, while 19 natives were killed. Before the American, 1,200 regulars, 1,600 militia, 160 killed, 190 wounded, 100 wounded prisoners, 530 POWs, with 986 total prisoners. 986 total casualties. Well, what have all these got to do with Canada? Simple. The British were in Canada. They wanted to take back what the Americans took away from them. War of 1812. But they failed. But shortly after the War of 1812, the Battle of New Orleans sent the British packing in 1815. But what does this got to do also with the Napoleonic Wars? It's kind of like World War I and World War II all over again. But the difference between those two wars was that in World War I, the Germans won the Eastern Front, but lost the Western Front. This is very similar to that. The British won pretty much what's like the European theater, which is pretty much the Eastern Front, while they lost to the United States. The USA keeps their land. But they also keep Canada. We could have fought and tried to take Canada, like we did with Mexico, but we gave Mexico back to Mexico just a few years later. Then just 3 years after the war ended, we could have easily done it again. A little bit of land up by Minnesota that was coming in from Canada, we were fighting over. But we signed a peace treaty. The president was smart enough just to sign a peace treaty, and line was drawn. That part was given in the United States. Canada, the same with Spain. Spain and Florida. Florida was seceded from Spain, given to the United States. That part of the United States was given. And speaking of which, 1810 was a war between Mexico and Spain. And that's where Mexico fought to get their independence from Spain, and they were successful. In 1821, that's when Mexico was born. And all the states I told you yesterday were in Mexico. If you watch my video, you'll see which ones they are from yesterday. But that's pretty much how it happened. You get states that are in another country, that are from another state, they have a tendency of doing that. And then, in 1836, Texas secedes from the Mexico Union and tries to become its own state and republic to get away from all of them. That's pretty much what it all comes down to. Big victory. Can't deny it one bit. Well, with that being said, we'll talk about Canada again tomorrow, about what part they played in other aspects of other parts of war. With that being said, I'm out of here. Peace.